Wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Welcome back, my friends, to the, I keep saying to the show that never ends. We are week three of the pod, and things should be going along pretty swimmingly this week. I think we've got a good routine down. Now it's just going to be more of the same. This week, well, at least we're going to start today, concentrating on these two sides. I think I need to change this towel. I think the dark, this makes it look, the workplace look dirtier than it actually is. And since I'm not doing any painting right away, I think I need to get rid of that. So if you see that disappear, that's what happened. I'm kind of starting in a hole this week because I didn't clean up like I normally do. I normally spend a little bit of time over the weekend cleaning the work area so that I can hit it Monday morning with a wink and a grin and get going. But I didn't do that this week, so I'm kind of playing catch up. But this is what we're going to be doing. I have, you can see, painted some clear, took some clear acetate and clear polycarbonate and sprayed a bunch of blue on it, on the blue areas, because it seems to me that given the choice between white, warm white strip lights with a blue tint or a blue screen in front of it, a blue gel in front of it, or just using blue lights, I get better results with the white and the blue gel than I do with straight blue. The blues aren't as bright. I don't know what the deal is. Same voltage, same manufacturer, same everything. But the warm whites give me a better result. So there you go. They shine through the plastic better. So that's what I'm going to use. And the areas that on these panels particularly, if it's not blue, it is warm white anyway. So it's easier for me. There's not a lot of color variations in here. Now these guys here are red, but those are handled with decals, so I'm not really worried about that. I can shine a white light through it and use the red decals to be done. And the same thing pretty much happens here. It's a red decal as well, so I can make that a white light behind it, and then blue these guys, blue this, blue that, and this is off-white. And these are off-white, so I can do all that with white lighting. And then what I'm looking forward to is actually putting in these screens behind it, and I'm going to put a cool white in there, and then I'll put decals over top of those screens. But I want to isolate those from the other lighting so that I don't get any spillover. But so what I'm going to do, and I've checked this with my static test shot to make sure I've got all the clearance in the world that I need. But basically, I'm going to be building a box and setting it about ½ an inch back from these three sides, and or mounting the bulbs on the back side. So I'm going to have like a panel sitting this far back from here, and then wiring my lights to that, and then suspending it back there so that I'll get more of a diffuse, even light. If you put the strip lighting right up on the plastic, it gets really sourcey and you're wasting a lot of good lighting. Now, the only place I will do that is right up here on this strip. I'm going to be kind of nailing that to the back of it. But everything else is going to be sitting like a ½ an inch away, maybe 3/4 of an inch away from the back wall. And it should go hopefully pretty quickly because these are symmetrical, and if I build one, I can flip it over and build the other and go from there. This Monday, slightly afternoon. The boxing is going well. In the back there are the boxes built around the back of them, and the more I put in, actually, I find that the less actual bulbs I need to use. I didn't want to have to depend on too many of those high density ones I've gotten from Elliott, these guys, but it's such sweet candy. They are actually doing the job very well. I hate the fact I'm probably going to end up using them up, so I'm going to have to go back to Elliott's link and find out where he got them and get some more. But here's what happens when you well, these are the two panels. These are the two panels that I've got done. Let me throw some voltage at them so you can see how well they are lit. And there you go. Very nice. Now I'm going to light block the backs of those, but you can see the bottom of the circuit shining in here. Now this one, see, here's what I'm talking about. This one, I can get this to stand up. There you go. This one I wrapped a string around it and then put a small one in the center shining out. This one I only put two longer strips shining out. So I'm wondering how much of that I'm actually going to need to do come along, as we go along. But yeah, those are shining up nice. Now these will get red decals in them, so that will help give the coloration there. But I really like the way that blue is popping. So now, and I've got this one done on, top one done on this side. So I find it easier to do the similarly, rather than doing all one side, I'm going back and forth, because once I get the one side done, I can do its mirror version and pop it into the other side of the console. So let's get this unwired and get on to the next one. Okay, we've got the other side going on now. Again, you'll see light spill out the back, but these will get red decals as well. But there you go, it's coming up nicely. So, and these are the boxes on the back. I will be blocking those out. And now since I've got those 4 boxes in today, that's a pretty good day's work. This is going to be the complicated one, because I got to start working on these individual screens. I got to put the lights in those and then get those mounted and then work around them. So that's going to be saving the most complicated ones for last. Hello and welcome back to Control Consoles Are Us today. Yesterday went so well. I'm hoping I have another good day today. I've got these front consoles to do on both walls. As you can see, I've got this one taped up. I need to put the tape on this one. But this went so well yesterday, and I've also got the monitors that I'm working on, the monitor banks. They will go in there. And basically, I wanted to separate the light out from them to give them a little bit of a difference from the concentrate the lighting then in these banks, rather than have the just general lighting from the other buttons. So that's job 1 for today, is get these 2 walls finished, and if that happens, then I will be able to do the spraying and decaling on these before I join them up to the Wishbone base. But that would be a fun goal for today. Oh, the other big thing would be, as the last thing to do, would be to put the big pricey monitors in the Wishbone. I've come to a harsh reality, and it's something I was dreading, but it has to happen. I've got to attach these side walls to the Wishbone before I can effectively finish the back here, because so much of this stuff overlaps as you're putting this piece into here. And unfortunately, that means I've got to put decals on while this wall is in place, which is not something I was looking forward to doing, because those decals are tough enough to go on just when you have them out in the open. But to have to work into deep corners to stick those decals down is not anything I am looking forward to. The alternative is to put decals now, but there's still so much work that needs to be done behind the scenes. I'm afraid I'm going to end up scuffing them up if I do. So I need to figure out which is going to be the lesser of those 2 evils and go from there. Especially when it comes to these front boxes. The weird geometry of getting these sidewall joints worked in makes it nigh on impossible to have those nice boxes on the outside before you put the wall in. I could get away with them with those 2, but that front one, I'm going to have it in place. So that was a kink in the road I was not expecting. Okay, I've got the side walls glued to the Wishbone, and I think I'm actually going to take it one step further. Even though I'm not going to glue it, I am going to tape the upper dome, the red roof in. I'm gonna tape that to the edges of the upper walls, because that not only gives me stability from the walls, it's not as flimsy, but it also keeps me from handling or bumping any decals that might happen inside there. Okay, this has kind of been one of those frustrating days. You know, the day I said, the other day I was talking about having those weeks where you usually get one day where you just plow through and get a bunch done. I generally also have one day where I get nothing done but spinning wheels, and it looks like today might be that day. And further to assuage any concerns, if you see this is what happens when you play with a cat that does not want to play with you. So if you see my hand in camera and you're wondering what the heck happened, that's what happened. So I lived, unfortunately the cat lived, but we'll get on with it. So right now I'm trying to put in the little strips that are going to go in each of these monitors, and I'm thinking indirect light is going to be best. So I'm going to put a strip on the top and a strip on the bottom, and then pack it with fiberfill and see how it looks. Good morning and welcome back. It is Wednesday. Now the first thing I did this morning was spend a good time cleaning, because when you're scratch building and working with making things, you get a lot of little errant chips here and there that just, you know, have a tendency to get sloppy because you're in the moment. Well, and then the next thing you know, you don't know which chip you're supposed to keep and which you were supposed to throw out. So gave the desk a good cleaning, and I feel much better about it. So yesterday we got these walls in here. Well, the big thing we did was attach the horseshoe here, the wishbone, this thing, to the side walls. Got all those in, got those glued in, and then I taped the top to the top of the ball on there just to help give it some form. But you can see what's going on here. Now yesterday one thing I was able to get finished was I got the monitors lit, and I've got them taped in and glued in. So what I need to do now is make a backing for this so that I can light this area around the monitors, and that will finish the lighting portion of our program. As far as the consoles, I still need to light these ceiling lights, but hopefully those will be a lot easier to address since they're a whole lot more spread out. But the important thing is getting these guys finished today, and then kind of getting these areas blocked off or quarantined. Or, you know, yesterday I went through with some hot glue and I glued down some wiring and neatened up some things and made some permanent connections and all that to make this a little bit more idiot proof. But you know, I'm the proof of the idiot, so I need to make sure it's me proof, which leaves, like I said, getting these two banks on either side lit. Okay, welcome back. It is still Wednesday. It's Wednesday evening. Had a big break in the middle of the day where I didn't feel like doing much, but I came back and I finished strong. I've taken the top back off because all of the bottom is wired. I got the last two boxes boxed in this evening. I'm going to throw some power at them so you can see how they turn out. Now the only thing left, well, there's a ton of things left. These are still separate circuits. I need to join them up into one circuit, but let's put some power to it so you can see just what a mess I've made of things. I did spend some time, before I do that, I did spend some time neatening wires and hot gluing them down and trying to make everything as condensed as possible, because I think that's going to help in the long run to do that while everything is out and away from the rest of the pod. Come on, let's put some power to this. Maybe you can get a little bit of a light show. Boom, there you go. That is this whole side. Let me kill the overheads here. There you go. Yes, those are very bright, but those will have the big decals on them. But there you go. And yeah, those might be just a little too bright, but like I said, they're going to have the full decals on them. And if I need to, I can tint those down a little bit, but better this than nothing, or better this than too weak. And then imagine similar on the other side, but there you go. And here are the boxes from the outside. Now I want to block the back of that with tape. I did this with some of that leftover JB weld, but I can do that with tape just as easily. Okay, we take that off. Now we spin it around and we do this side. Let's see. Ba-bam. Yeah, there you go. Hot snot. So tomorrow I'm going to be able to hit this thing with, and you know, actually I could do that tonight. I could go ahead and spray the clear gloss on it tonight, so that it's got lots of time to dry, and I can start decaling first thing in the morning. So let me do that. That'll be the last thing I do tonight. That's easy enough to do. I don't have to get out a bunch of tools to do that. So let me do that last thing, and then we'll pick this up again tomorrow. Okie dokie, peoples. It is, it's Thursday. And as you can see by what's laid out in front of me, it's decal day. I have had 2 cups of coffee, which is enough to settle my nerves without making them jumpy again. I am going to be... This kind of looks nice. I just sat back and take a look at it this morning. It went together quite nicely. And all the wiring is nice and compact. But it's time to decal. And got all of my victims out here ready to go. I'm going to clean up all the wiring and all the stuff I don't need so that I only have my decaling materials in front of me. And then while the decals are drying and in between coats and stuff like that, I think I will go off and build the arms. That would be fun to do. It's all construction and sanding and cleaning and stuff like that, and it doesn't is not going to need to be wired up or electrified or anything. So nothing to it but to sit down with let me go get a nice cup of hot water to soak decals in, and we will start doing this. Okay, pardon the sound of the vinyl cutter in the background, but you can see the first thing I did with the first decal was cut off all of this black that I'm not going to be needing and cut it down to the 3 parts that I will be needing, and that makes them easier to handle. Okay, those laid down a lot easier, and I got to tell you, it was because I did a whole lot more trimming on the front end. Did a whole lot more trimming while it was still on the paper. And basically what I did, let me see if I can find the similar one from the other side. So here's the same one that would go on the other side, on the other side. Basically what I did is I cut out if there was black spaces between these openings, I just opened those all the way up, cut them out to the outer perimeter, and even trimmed that a little bit thicker, because it's the stuff between the buttons that's really causing problems, and you don't need it because you've painted everything black, and the black will blend in perfectly once you put the coat of flat over it. So in the cases like this, I will cut probably all of the black inside of those white boxes out completely. So that gives more breathing room around each button and decreases the amount of fussiness you have to have with the carrier film going over top of each one of them. So there. This is probably going to be the easiest of the side. That just goes right up in here and it lays flat. So let's do that last one. Okay, this panel here is dry, or is drying in, and rather than go and work on the one right next to it, I'm going to work on the opposite one and kind of ping pong back and forth, and that'll allow time between while I'm doing this one for that one to dry, because you don't want to put decals on the next panel and risk these guys getting wet again and shifting around. So let's bounce over to here. Okay, those side decals are in, and the only thing I can think of that's crazier than trying to put those things in when the model is already built would be to try to put those things in with the model already built and not cutting out the inside pieces. That would have been madness. Okay, cats and kittens, take a gander. There you go. I got three animals, or two types of animals in the same sentence. All the decals are down, and the sky is gray. But everything is drying in, hopefully making themselves happy. These are conspicuously open. I wonder why. But all of those tiny lines are around there, and yes, it was a heartache and a headache and nerve-wracking, but trimming out, and I'll see if you can see, let me see if I can zoom in on a piece so that you can see where they're clear, so they're tough to see. But there you go. That's how much I was cutting off carrier film around the insides of those openings to make them lay down a little bit easier. This here is, there you go. That's how much I cut into the black artwork to cut off that much carrier film. So, and these are my tweezers so that you get an idea for scale. But yeah, you can see little bits. Here's a, I can find one here. There you go. This guy here was the inside of a hole that I opened up a little bit bigger. But that's what you got to do if you want them to lay anything close to flat. So those are drying off. I'm going to go away for a few hours and then come back tonight, or maybe wait till tomorrow morning to put a flat coat over top of them. But a big chunk of work done today. Hello and welcome back. It is Friday, or as I prefer to call it, the day after Dios de los Decals, day after the day of the decaling. All of these have had a chance to set in overnight, and with mixed results. I like the lines. The screens are the weak part, because even if you move it around with a toothpick, if you put any slight little nick in there, once you start shining a light through there, you're really going to see the breaks in it, and you can't really touch them up with paint because that makes a dark spot. You can't really lay another piece of decal over it because that makes a dark spot. So you just have to kind of do your best and live with it. Now the decals are a little bit, well, they're meant to overlap, but you end up with a white ring around it because there's an indent on the clear piece that I failed to take care of. So I'm going to have to address that at some point, maybe before the next build, to figure out how to best do that. Some sort of painted black frame in, or I may go in and try to touch it up just around most obvious spots, or I could close it all up and see how it's going to look and see if I really need to worry about it. But today, job one is to get the flat coat on here, and then we can start dealing with parts of the ceiling. We deal with the parts of the ceiling, and then I need to start figuring out my wiring circuits, because I have one circuit for all of the, zoom out. We have one circuit for all of this, minus those two red lights, because I want all of the red lights to be on their own circuit, which is the three main lights up here, Bingy, Bingy, and Bingy, and then those two. Those are all the red circuits. I want that to be on one switch, and the instrument lighting, including the screens, I want to be on a second switch. But I want to make sure everything is done in here before I attach those screens, because that's where the big money is, and I don't want to screw around on those. So flat coat on this is first, and then we can get into the fun stuff of the ceiling. My goal today for this week is to get the top on here, get the lighting circuits done for those, and get this kind of done to the point where I can set it aside and start working on the rest. Now, I did take a little bit of time this morning. This looks a bit like a NASA probe, but I have light blocked the back of each of these big consoles, and I've kind of neatened up the wiring and tried to make that as cohesive as possible. So let's get a clear coat, and then once that happens, we can get the tiny details like the hand grippers and manipulators and all that kind of stuff put in there, and get the tub, the place where the seat is, get the floor, get that attached, because then we need to start thinking about chasing our wires down to where our switches are going to be, and where I'm going to run the power in and out of the ship, that kind of stuff. So lots to do today, so let's get to it. Okay, I've sprayed on a coat of the matte varnish, and I'm letting that dry. I did dilute it a little bit this time because I thought maybe the first time it was going on a little thick, so I just did a couple of drops of water into the cup with the varnish in it. I know that's going to make it take longer to dry, so I'm going to step away from it so that I don't want to fiddle with it. So let's go do something else. Okay, as you can see, I've shifted over work to the red Barts, and that includes the inside of the door, which I have removed the painting masks that I had there, so I could put the decals over that. And also there's a spot underneath each of those lights that gets a decal, so I just glossed where those are. And then once the decals are down, I can flat over the whole thing, but no sense glossing over all of this. And I'll just, gloss over it. Why I didn't gloss over it, because there's no decals up in here, so they'll get the flat finish when everything is done. So I am pondering. I'm pondering whether it's going to be worth trying to light the door. All of these little explosive bolts are lit. Most importantly, the signs here are lit, but there's not a heck of a lot of space between the front and the back of the door to do that. If I chrome tape all of this to light block the other side of the door, it's possible. I don't want to add too much weight to this because it's going to make the mechanism tougher to work with. So I at least wanted to block those off so that the decals would have a nice white surface to go on. Even though the decals themselves are backed in white, it's still a nice glossy surface for them to go on. So let me spray the gloss over these areas. Okay, I'm going to take a moment out here to put the decals on the inside of the door, and I am eternally grateful that they do not require me to trim them down like the console ones did. Also, I have two white decals that go below here and here, so I'm going to go ahead and get those knocked out, and that way I can put all that aside and start working on what is the next bit? The next bit is probably going to be to get this glued down to that, and then once I have signed off on the interior, I can put the big monitors in the front. That would be a good place to stop today, I think. Okay, things are off drying and settling and curing in their own little worlds, and I am starting to move out beyond the immediate concerns of the interior, and we come to this guy. This is the iconic window. This is the money shot. This is the piece that is the piece of resistance. Now, unfortunately, looks like mine already came with pre-scratched in it, so wasn't wild about that. But what we need to do is paint the framework. There's a thin frame around here that we need to paint, and we need to paint it on the inside as well, because you'll see it when you open the back door. If you don't paint it, it's going to look odd. So what I need to do is create a mask here for that window, and I've done one for that very purpose. And I'm going to mask on the inside and on the outside, and that is going to keep it, not only keep the keep it clean from getting black paint on it, but it's also going to keep it from getting scratched up, because we can leave that mask on pretty much throughout the rest of the construction, and then peel it off from the inside just as we're getting ready to glue it in, and then leave the outside mask on when we're doing the outside painting. So let's get this guy masked off. Okay, I've got the outside masked, and in the process of doing that, I figured out how we need to do it, and so I'll go ahead and do the inside now. The hardest part in all of this is finding the particular line of framework that you want to be going up against. There is the yellow vinyl is butted up against the edge of the framework that I am choosing, but it's not that easy to determine, especially when you're dealing with clear. So now all I need to do is put an inside mask on and have it line up exactly with that. And the secret I found was not to try to do it all in one piece, but to do it in a thin piece. Well, here, let me pull these out. Okay, so basically what you've got is, there's actually a slit here you're not seeing, is an O that has right and left sides, and you take one and you running around the inside. And then there's another completely rounded one that's a little bit larger than this negative shape that you put over it to block out the middle. There you can kind of see the difference between this is the clear part, this is the circular mask I just put down on the inside, and then I take this guy and I just lay it down over top of the, it just has to overlap. It's not going to go all the way out to the edges like this one does, but it's going to keep the rest of the center cleaned off. And now we can spray black paint on it because we need to put a black trim on it. Okay, you can see I just placed these parts inside the shell to illustrate a point. This has obviously been masked off, but this is how nice and cleanly the inside of the frame fits in the top of the shell. What we want to do though is you want to glue it to that part first. This is the seal that you really want to have, because that's the one that's going to show against the outside. I don't want to flip this over because it's sitting there very tenuously, but you want to glue the window into the inside of the frame. But when you put the inside of the dome in, or you put the cabin in, it's going to lock into that very cleanly. But what I really wanted to show you was these front windows, or not, they're not windows, but they're front instrument clusters. Unlike some of the other instrument clusters, we are pretty much up against the inside of the shell. So there's not a lot of room behind this to put a light box like you would have for some of the other, or for the side panels. So once you put these inserts in on the inside edge of those, you have got precious little room behind that to do any sort of elaborate lighting. I don't know that there's going to be room for more than a surface mount LED facing inwards, or I don't even think there's room for a 3mm. But what I want to do while I'm here, and I don't see a pencil laying about, let me grab a pencil. Hold on one second. Okay, I've grabbed a pencil. What I want to do is kind of trace this area out on the inside of the shell, and I've sprayed that with a gray primer. What that's going to allow me to do is kind of see where my box is, where it's going to hit, and you can see where my area is and where I need to light block. I'll probably put some silver tape over this area on the inside so that it'll block the light, since that's going to be so close. By the time you put a light right here, it's going to be so close to this alcove that you run the risk of it shining through. So that'll tell me where to put the light blocking tape, and that's where we are right now. The door came out beautifully. I put a flat coat over it. That's looking very good. The ceiling is looking very good. Again, another flat coat. I did some pre-shading on there with black before I went in with the reds, and I think it helped tremendously. It's not as flat and drab as the instructions look for that. And in a continuing series of giving you odd looks at things, here is the door on its track. Now, this top track has not been glued in yet, and of course the door won't be glued at all, or the halves of the door haven't been glued together yet, because I'm still debating whether to try to light the inside. That's why I did all of that work to light block it, so that I really want to light up this sign, the caution sign, and this. Even if I don't get all of the bolts lit up, I really want to do something there. So I need to decide the best way to get around that. And then I want to show you the chief villain here. Here is the chief villain. It's this ridge right here that the earmuff glues into, because when you go to open the door, that's the thing that's going to hit the paint. That's going to hit the paint on the outside and scratch any decals or paint that you've got on there. So I'm thinking it might help to just ease that over, sand it a little bit, do something to kind of cushion that. I don't know if, I certainly don't want to add any more height to it. So I was thinking, instead of sanding it, well, sand it down and then maybe cover it with the furry side of Velcro or something to cushion that. Just, or maybe a piece of that felt that's got the adhesive backing on it. Just something to keep the paint, keep the outside of the door protected, because you can see it hitting right there. That's where you're going to have your wear issues. So, and what wear issues are not issues that, you know, change in a full moon. Wear issues are issues that happen when two friction points meet and it ends up scraping your paint, that you don't want to have happen. So a little bit of prevention now might save you some heartache down the line. Okay, here's what all the fuss is about. These are the two monitors. Now this is what they look like pulled out from the old from the test shot kit that I had made, and I'm getting ready to put them in the new cabin. But I wanted you to see how they look unfettered by their surroundings, and again, you can see why they can only be but so close together. You're getting that scan, the overscan, that's happening because it's a video of a video source, but maybe you can see them a little bit better to see that those are actual animations. And basically, when it comes to putting them in the new consoles, all you really need to do is kind of hold them up, you know, you push them back underneath the hole, kind of center them. You see there's no real attachment points here. If you put them up underneath and kind of center them in those holes and hold them in spot, and then I'm just going to spot hot glue them in place. Hot glue is the best. It won't run like CA. It gives you a real quick setup. You can put up a couple little spots of hot glue and then push it in there, and you get like half a second of repositioning before the hot glue cools off. And then you can tack it in place with that, and then if you need to add any more, you can. But it has great holding power without taking forever to dry like a clear glue would. I don't want to pack any putty in there, either epoxy sculpt or any of the epoxy putties, because I don't want, you know, the case you might end up shorting out something or cutting off ventilation. I just found that hot glue was the best and easiest and quickest solution. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Like I said, it's going to take all hands on deck, so I can't put it on film. But basically what I'm going to do is wait for, you know, put this in behind the hole, kind of center it on one of these. But when you get a screen that fills out like this, that will tell you where your full screen needs to be. You can see these are a little bit wider. There's your crew. There you go. The heart rate, temperatures, and all that kind of stuff as we're slowly killing off our crew. But the screens are a little bit more widescreen, 16 by 9 than they look. But we're only cropping out a square version of it, so we're actually losing some information off of both sides. Because as much of a visionary as Kubrick was, he didn't foresee widescreen coming in. All of the monitors are 4x3s. There you go. There's your... And again, this is exactly how they come. Trying to put these on a nice clean background so that you can see, and then get this lamp out of the way. But there you can see that. Unfortunate, I use a red background and then the screens immediately turn red. But I'm trying to show a little bit of, without the distraction of the painting towel underneath it. Okay, so we've got both of the screens in. Now, I took a little bit longer than I normally would to do that, just because I wanted to make sure every little bit was in the right position, because, you know, when you go on camera, you want to make sure that you've got crossed your I's and dotted your T's, perhaps a little bit more than if you're doing it for yourself. One important thing to be aware of when you're putting these in is where the USB jack is, which is right there. It's right, same place on both boards. Well, these are two identical boards, so it's going to be in the same place. I have investigated it, and yes, they do make plugs like this that have a 90-degree angle. They go up and then they take a turn. I couldn't find any in the local shops, so I was on the verge of going online to order one, but it turns out that once you plug this in, that you if you use this one on this side, that it plugs in. Well, it doesn't when you got it when you're holding it with your camera. Hold on. It turns out that there is room to plug that in once you have do it on that side, and this does make the clearance. It does fit underneath. You'll make sure that that's doubly plugged in, but you can get your clearance that way. As long as you're underneath that window frame, you're in good shape. If you push that back, you will see that you are underneath the window frame. If that troubles you any more than that, you can cut some of this rubber away and give you some more clearance, but I have found out that just by trying it out that it will fit. So there you go. Okay, this is where we're going to close it off for the weekend, I think. Yes, but before we start recounting all the stuff we didn't get done, let us celebrate what we did get done. And I've got everything kind of jerry-rigged here to show you all of the lighting that I got done. And there you go. There's lighting in on one side. Now, the ceiling lights are not lit. That is actually sunlight coming in. That's not... Hopefully the actual lighting will look like that. But there's the lighting on the second side. And there are the screens. And that's the view from the front window. Now let me spin this thing around and see if what we can see. And this also shows me what needs to be addressed as far as the light blocking on the outside. There you go. It's in through the back door view. There you can see the screens a lot better. But that's all of the... Oh, no, I'm sorry. We're missing. We don't have all of them lit because we don't have the Wishbone lit. Yeah, we don't have the Wishbone lit. I got to find the wiring for that. Oh, it's right there. Okay. No, I'm not going to try to add that at this point, but very nice. Once we get this in, now all this stuff will be dimmed down a lot once we get it inside the dark shell, and you don't have sunlight coming through the outside edge or the outside of the walls, like down in the footwell. You won't see any of those lines there, but and then one view down through the top. Let me see if I can put a battery on that Wishbone. Okay, this is kind of the other half of the lighting. I've got the Wishbone lit back up, and the two red lights in the back. Those are lit, and of course the screens are still running. But you put it all together, it spells mother. Yeah, those greens are awfully powerful, but when you put the other lights on against them, it kind of balances them out. But it's starting to look very pod-like. Very pod-like. And that, dear friends, is where we're going to finish for this week. Seems to take longer and longer than I was hoping, but the lighting is coming on. And like I said, once you get to this point, you're more than halfway done. And I have been working on other stuff as far as getting the outer shell bodywork ready to go. So once this is all sealed and done and, secured, and all the wiring is cleaned up and glued down and all that kind of stuff, once I get that in the shell, we're off to the races, because it's not that much longer then. And this weekend I probably will nail down my thoughts as far as how I'm going to display it. Is it going to be on a base? I'm thinking maybe a black obelisk type of monolithic type of base for it, that I can maybe move the switches out of the ship and down onto the base. That might be fun. That or I just don't think it's going to end up having the a situation where I can make it completely wireless. I'm not wireless, but you know, not plugged into a wall, because the requirements of this, the amp requirement of all these lights means batteries would go. I mean, batteries would die as soon as they looked at it. So it's going to have to be in some sort of base, and that means that whole bottom side is just going to end up sitting on. So I don't need to worry about finishing the bottom, you know, that little cone that goes in from the outside. If I'm going to glue it down to a base, I don't really need to worry about that too much. So that's even less work that needs to be done. The only real serious work that needs to be done on the outside is that body work on the seam between the front and the back, and making sure that that's nice and smoothed over and sanded and puttied and looking nice. I'm still planning on making the earmuffs magnetic, although if I put this thing in a base, I might not have to worry about that because I won't be needing to get into it, but you never know. So this weekend I gotta figure out the base, and then I also need to work on the door, figuring out whether or not I want to try to light that. I do, but I don't know exactly how to do that yet, so that's going to be the next major sticking point. And next week we should be tackling all that. So until next week, be good to each other, and we'll see you here next time.